I decided to give your knees rest. We're not going to continue that for now. We'll do something that I think I found very profound, so I hope you'll find it really useful too. So please lie on your... Actually, no, stand up. Just for a minute. Just for a minute. So let your arms hang by your sides. And just notice what sense you have of yourself in standing, where your eyes are oriented. And then turn a little bit just in one direction several times. And what do you notice? So not left and right, one direction. And are you turning with the intention of seeing something, or are you turning because there's a part of you that you like to turn and you're turning with that first? Or maybe you're turning to see how far you can turn. So if we can, let's come back from range and be more interested in, if we think about this idea that an action without interference will, started in one area, will transmit through the entire skeleton and will create movement in the joints, a contribution or a participation to the degree that they are able. So I think when you turn your head, you're beginning to, you are engaging, you're engaging this functionally coupled system of your spine. So how much movement do you feel through the length of your spine when you turn your head? Do you feel just the vertebra of your neck moving? So does it start in your head and immediately go to your feet? Or do you feel a sequential chain of action, chain of motion down to your feet? Or maybe the moment you start turning your head, you feel the shift of weight on your feet. And then as you go a little further, you feel a differentiation elsewhere. Try turning in different ways and see if it engages the length of your spine differently. So you could try just turning your eyes. Well, that's the intention, but without rigidly holding yourself. Your eyes lead the movement, let's say. Now, instead of leading with your eyes, lead with your nose. Lead with your ears. And then explore that on the other side. And as you're sensing yourself and how the motion, what joints are involved or contribute to your turning, notice, are you seeing yourself? Are you seeing inside yourself? Are you sensing yourself? Because in this lesson, which isn't in a way a true ATM, may not be classified by some as a true ATM, we're going to play with the distinctions between a visual image and a kinesthetic image. Okay. So please lie on your back. And I would suggest that for most of this lesson, you keep your knees bent and your feet standing. Why? Why do you think? What difference does it make to the shape of your spine, the tilt of your pelvis to have your legs bent compared to long? Affects your lower back. So actually remind yourself kinesthetically of that. So lengthen your legs and feel how the contact along the length of your back changes. And then draw your legs up again and notice, do you rest on a different place on the back of your pelvis? Does the vertebra of your lumbar spine come a little close to the floor? And what happens into the shape of your neck when your legs are bent compared to long? Okay, so the next time your legs are bent, just keep them bent. And find a place for your feet where you feel it requires the least amount of work to keep them bent. Actually, looking around the room, most people have changed the relationship of their feet and legs, one to the other and to their buttocks, compared to before that crawling lesson. So more legs look like they're standing closer to standing legs than before. But that's something obviously that we will explore, is what is a standing leg. Okay, so with your arms by your sides, imagine the length of your spine from your coccyx to your head. And wander with your attention along, up the length of your spine. Noticing which places are resting on the floor, which places are not. And what sort of image do you have of your spine? Do you, as you imagine it, do you have a sense of its length? And when you imagine its length, of its width or its volume. So how long is your spine? How wide? Does it have a shape in your imagination? Does it have a width and a depth? Maybe you have a sense of it being different in different parts of your spine. Do you have any sense of the weight of your spine? Could you imagine where your spine would be lighter or where it would be heavier? So most of us are more acquainted with the back of our back, our spinous processes, which is the most backward part of our spine. But our spine actually has a large volume inside of us. In our lower back, in the lumbar vertebra, the spine projects up to halfway through our torso. So the front surface of the vertebral bodies is literally only a few inches below the front skin of your belly right now. And in your thoracic spine, the vertebrae are about a quarter to a third of the volume of the chest. And then in the cervical spine, the depth of the spine from front to back, the front of the vertebral body to the spinous process, is about a third of the front to back depth of your neck. So it's a significant structure. It has more than 100 joints alone in the thoracic region. And I always count up the number of joints and then I forget it between the head and the pelvis. But I think it's more than 150 or 160. So now bring your attention to what we describe as our neck, the cervical vertebra, the 7 vertebrae that make up your neck. And can you imagine where they're located? Where is the uppermost vertebra relative to the base of your skull? What's the shape of the curve that they make? So at the moment, you're not touching. We're going to in a minute, but so we can compare different ways of sensing ourselves. But for now, what's your imagination like of the location, the shape, the width, the volume of the vertebra of your neck? And when you imagine the vertebra of your neck, what part of them are you imagining? Are you thinking of the spinous processes at the back? Or the little processes that extend to the sides on either side? Or the body of the vertebra, which lie behind your throat, esophagus? So in your imagination, what's the relationship of the vertebra of your neck to your skull? And when you imagine your neck, what are you doing? Are you imagining what it looks like from outside of yourself? Or are you overlying an image into yourself? Is it possible to imagine your neck without imagining what it looks like? How would you do that? What sensations do you feel coming from your neck? Now, you may not know how to recognize them right now, or they may not be clear, because most of us tend to work the musculature of our neck and shoulders more than is necessary. But so even if your sensations are not detailed, can you sense places that are neck and places that are not neck? And now switch back to having a visual image. And how would you describe the difference in what you do or what you sense or how between a visual image and a kinesthetic image? Is one more clearly defined in space than the other? Is the shape or location of the vertebra of your neck any clearer or easier to identify for you with a visual image or a kinesthetic image? With one of those, does your neck feel more a part of you or less a part of you? Sometimes we experience a distinction of knowing by it not being there can be easier to identify than it being there. Is one image more internal? Which image? So we're still exploring this idea for now, without touching of these two different, to acquaint yourself whether one is more familiar to you and how to begin to identify or develop the ability to have the other. So which image would better prepare you for movement? So think about that, and then the movement you're going to do is simply a small movement of rolling your head. So you're going to do that with your knees bent, feet standing, and try it with forming a visual image of your neck and moving, or one that a kinesthetic image which comes more from the sensations in the tissues, the contact, sensations of movement, of changing relationships. So try both ways. And oftentimes, simply asking ourselves these questions, searching, being curious and interested, can open up or inhibit our usual ways of attending to ourselves or thinking that enables something different to emerge. So pause. And again, come back to what sort of image you can form of the shape of the curvature of your neck and where the vertebra meets your skull. What sort of image you have of your spine and the spinous processes protruding backwards. And then bring your hands to the back of your neck and sense the curve of your spine, the curve of your neck. So let your head rest quietly while your hands touch and inform you about the reality of the shape of the curve of your neck. Is the location of your spinous processes, the most backward part of your neck, are they where you imagined them to be? So gradually move your fingers. So have your knees bent. And then move your fingers upward to the base of your skull and feel where's the highest spinous process that you can sense. And sense the shape of the curve of your neck from those spinous processes. And how does it compare with what you imagined? So at this moment, you're not doing any movement, you're just exploring and comparing, referencing what you imagined with what your fingers find to see whether they fit, whether they match. Okay, bring your hands down and rest a moment. But in your resting, notice, does having touched and sensed your neck give you a clearer sense or a clearer image of what the curve is like and some detail there? So now bring one hand to your neck. Whichever hand you like. And just notice, which part of your hand are you bringing to your neck? Is it the fingertips? Is it the palm of your hand? Is it a part or the whole of your hand that's contouring to your neck? And trace with this hand the spinous processes up to the base of your skull. Find the closest spinous process that you can to your skull, which is actually the spinous process of C2 usually. And then trace downwards. How much pressure do you need to use to know that there is a bone that you're sensing underneath your hand? So when you, each time you shift to or the next vertebra you shift to, can the skin that's on top of the vertebra sense your finger? And your finger sense the skin and the bone underneath the spinous process? And then move your fingertips a little lower down to the next one and do the same thing. Check that your breathing is continuing. And then what's the lowest vertebra that you can sense? So gradually move lower down the vertebra of your neck. You may even move onto the upper thoracic vertebra. And keep trying to identify the curve, the shape of the curve. Or you can put one of those pads under your pelvis, whichever you prefer. Do so. And what about the either side of the spinous process? Can you shape your fingers to feel the texture? And I noticed that in the last segment, you did some touch exploration where you noticed different qualities of touching depending on how you used yourself. So maybe you can remember some of those qualities and see what's the texture like here. Can those qualities inform you about something about the musculature of your neck? On the left and on the right? Okay, bring that hand down. Pause a moment. Just notice, are you forming visual images or kinesthetic? Or shifting between them? So now bring your other hand to touch your neck. And explore with this hand. Does this hand give you different information? Maybe you could find a way to listen with this hand that helps you sense yourself in a different way than your other hand. How much pressure do you need to use? So if I see your head tilting backwards and forwards, that's a lot of pressure. So the vertebrae of our whole spine have a pliability, an elasticity almost. So the curve of the vertebra can change through the length of the spine without necessarily, and because we have those two most mobile vertebrae at the top of the neck, the head can be differentiated. So several times feel your fingers with the skin of your neck. So you shift the perspective. So you sense your fingers from your neck. And then sense your neck with your fingers. And then move to another vertebra, another spinous process. Try it again. And then bring your hands down and pause again. And if you want to change position, you want to roll onto your side for a moment, off your back, please do so. I'm curious, how many, if you remember, do you remember the floor getting softer last segment? Can you raise something, a hand, a finger, if you remember that? Yeah. Okay. So just notice how, if it feels hard to you today, remember that. And what does that does that offer you some information into yourself about your organization? It's not that the floor's got harder again, it's that something's changed in ourselves that makes the floor feel hard. And to, while you're reorganizing again, to keep shifting, giving yourself rests. As you need. Okay, please come back onto your back. Bend your knees. This time, can you put both of your hands on the sides of your neck? Now, there are a lot of strong muscles most of us have in our neck, so go gently. But what you're looking for is the little bony prominences that are on either side of the neck, the transverse processes. And if you let your fingers rest there and give yourself a little bit of time without too much prodding, you may find them. They might emerge, or you can slide your fingers very gently, a little backwards as if to go behind your neck, and a little forwards as if to come towards your throat at the front of your neck. And see, in that movement of sliding, is there any contour or shape that you can feel within that could reflect the width of the vertebra of your neck beneath? So maybe try interlacing your fingers behind your neck and bring your elbows forwards so that if your shoulders, if it's possible, your elbows could touch one another below your chin. And so you're really creating a cradle for you. So your hands are not behind your head. They're behind your neck. And your elbows are forwards. So you need to slide your hands lower. And a little bit more. So you're creating a sling or a hammock for your neck. So where the heels of, if you found a way of doing this hammock without strangling yourself, then the heels of your hands are likely to be very close to the transverse processes. So your elbows, so it's not underneath your head. Slide your hands down. Slide your hands down. There. Now interlace your fingers. And now bring your elbows down. Easy. So in this position, could you, supporting your neck like this, could you lengthen your legs? And then bend your legs up again and feel the sensation, the change in shape of your neck. And then bend them back up again. Can I take one of your pads out? It's too high. Do that several times. So you're using your hands to give you feedback about your changing organization, and trying to listen. So do this and see if you can form a visual image. So you see a picture of yourself. That picture could be inside yourself. You could be outside yourself and looking at that image. Some people can even put the image outside of themselves, to the left or to the right. And then try and form a kinesthetic image, which it has less of a projected picture. And it is fed or informed through the sensations of contact, of movement, of pressure, of weight, of relationship change, changing relationship of particular parts. And then take your hands away and find out, can you continue lengthening your legs and bending them and still sense the changing shape of your neck? Can you sense, if you form a visual image, how clear is it? And then how clear is your image if you try and have a kinesthetic image? So sometimes we can switch and not know we're switching. So part of the movement, we're listening to sensation, then we're forming a visual image, then we switch back. Or it can be informed by both. You might have a little of each. Okay, next time your knees are bent, keep them bent, stand your feet, bring your hands, arms by your sides. And if I ask you to imagine your neck now, how is it? Do you form a visual image? Is that image a little different? How much is kinesthetic, coming from the sensations in the tissues, in the joints? Can you imagine the distance between your vertebrae? And now again, think of the length of your spine, its width, its volume, its depth, its shape. And do you feel as if you're doing that a little differently? And so now, without moving, prepare to roll yourself to one side. And what do you do? Do you form a visual image of yourself moving? Do you sense yourself in the same way or in a different way? Or have you already gone to get dinner? What happens? Can you prepare to roll and use a visual image? And then try preparing to roll using a kinesthetic image. And then just begin to move. And observe as you do how much awareness of what you're doing and how you're doing it is being formed kinesthetically and how much visual. And if you feel that your kinesthetic sensing has changed a little bit, has refined or honed a little bit, has that spread to any other places? And then gradually, more and more move. Just noticing how you're doing it. What's happening? Can you stay with the kinesthetic? Do you shift between visual and kinesthetic? So it's not that one is more right than the other, but usually one is more developed in each of us, but it can be a different one in different parts of ourselves. And that as we learn to listen, sense more the kinesthetic image, it informs our visual image, and they're more likely to fit into a reality of what is actually happening rather than a projected image of what we would like to happen that we can think is happening but may not actually be happening. So roll to your side. Bring yourself via sitting up to standing. And when you come up to standing, explore turning again and notice for yourself how you're using the kinesthetic sense, your kinesthetic sense, or whether you're forming a visual image, or whether you shift between them. As Moshe says, when you know what you're doing, you can learn to do what you want. And learning to do what you want, not what you think you're doing to do what you want. It's one of those. There's a poet that writes that way. I can't think of his name right now. Do you know that I know that you know that I love you? That sort of thing. It is kind of one of those. So much so I've forgotten what I was going to say. Yeah, it's about impossible becoming possible and learning to be more comfortable with yourself, knowing what you're doing. Okay. So what I suggest is that I was going to have you talk about with somebody what you noticed with that, but we'll take 5 minutes tomorrow. So reflect on it tonight. What you perceived for yourself about the visual kinesthetic and if it made a difference in any way, what you learnt, if you learnt something about yourself and your tendency. So we can talk a bit more about it tomorrow.